Greetings, my dear friends. Russia has launched an attack on Ukraine, stating the situation it found itself was exactly the same as the United States found itself when the Soviet Union started placing missiles in Cuba way back in 1962, a danger to its core national interest. However, since this attack, Russia has now the persona non grata globally, and it is possibly the most sanctioned nation on earth ever. Ukraine's attack under attack has made Russia to be blamed for everything wrong with the world. Global attention is squarely on Ukraine. Everything else under the carpet. A new world order is shaping up, yet the biggest threat to this new world order, China, is not in focus. Let us get China back in focus. Friends, welcome to Chax Simplifies. I, Commander Chakrapani, or Chax, your host. Today, we will look in detail about the Russian roulette, which has been in action for a while now, compare the situation of Ukraine with that of Taiwan under the shadow of China, bring our focus back squarely on China, and take a look at the New World Order and implications for India in a little bit detail. This video is the more detailed version of the short version which I had uploaded a few days back. If you would like to see that version, I will have a link to that in the description box below. Let's take a look at what's happening as far as China is concerned. Starting first internally. The fertility rate in China is just hovering around 1.2, well below the replacement mark, and is faced with a falling population thanks to the one-child policy which China had for a long time. Ethnic troubles are mounting. Whether it is the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang or the Tibetans, or even the other denominations of Muslims and other ethnic minorities, wherever they are in China. It is facing a financial meltdown and a meltdown in the financial system. Loan defaults are rife. Not just Evergrande, private companies and public companies, also governments, are defaulting on loans. The unbridled lending, as far as BRI is concerned, has got over $385 billion of debt, which may have to be written off because these have been money has been lent to nations which probably will never be able to repay. For example, Pakistan. There has been this fake gold scam, the King Gold jewelry, and numerous other scams that are coming to light. China faces an acute food and water shortage. Africa is the granary as far as China is concerned, and so was Ukraine and Russia. There is enough water as far as Tibet is concerned. A lot of this water flows down almost every river in the Asia Pac region, takes its birth here. China has dammed all of these rivers. It is the most dammed nation on earth with 85,000 plus dams. Yet, these dams have led to unprecedented floods, uncontrollable floods in the recent past, further damaging its crops and affecting its food security. There is a major personality cult in China, and Xi Jinping does not like anyone coming close to him in popularity. Witness Jack Ma getting absolutely out of headlines out of news, out of everything in China for months, and then suddenly surfacing. Feng Shui, the tennis star, also faced a similar situation. The ride hailing app, it is the world's largest ride hailing app, Didi, was banned. Private tuitions have been banned in China. I really don't know what next. Yet, due to falling GDP, businesses moving out of China, and excess capacities, employment in China is falling. People are being rendered jobless and restive. The issues as far as the zero tolerance policy of COVID have also led the population not too happy. This is a very unhappy population which traded freedom for economic security. Let's look at the external situation as far as China is concerned. I did mention that GDP is falling. The BRI has created a major infrastructure bottleneck as far as China is concerned, with many of the projects not progressing or coming to a halt. It has given debt of upwards of $1 trillion to 138 nations. It is following the policy of colonization using a debt trap. It is trying to corner all global resources wherever they are, from lithium to oil, and is greedy for more. It has been using trade as a weapon for a long time, but of late, this has become even more visible. Meat, wine imports from New Zealand and Australia have been stopped, citing dangers due to the Wuhan virus. Yes, you're right. You heard it correct. The Wuhan virus. Indian ships have been held up at various Chinese ports on very flimsy grounds. It has denied rare earths to Japan and other countries, and has been weaponizing the supply chain, delaying, withholding shipments, artificially inflating prices, from toys to medicines, from PPE kits to vaccine, not worrying whether the vaccines are actually working or the PPE kits themselves have been found wanting and defective. It uses coercive diplomacy to the fullest and tries to enforces one China policy to shut out any dissent. Its cartographic aggression, whether it is in India or in the South China Sea, knows no bounds. It has been undermining global institutions. Can you imagine, the United Nations has not yet had a full-fledged discussion on the Wuhan virus, even 2 years down the line? The WHO has been singularly unsuccessful in getting to the origins of the Wuhan virus. Yet, China has many global UN organizations headed by Chinese who further its own agenda. It has been misusing its seat on committees and high table that govern or develop global standards in high-tech area, especially 5G, space exploration, artificial intelligence, etc., to further its agenda. It has invested over $1 trillion in 5G. No wonder over 60% of the patents have been held by Chinese companies, especially Huawei. Its leadership in artificial intelligence, data processing, biotechnologies has been weaponized. When it conducted the hypersonic missile test in August, although this was reported only in October 2021, it took the world by surprise. It is fast approaching the capabilities of US in missile and space technologies. Yet, China finds itself on the back foot, especially post the Wuhan virus, because many a country, many a business has realized the double game China plays. In other words, the Chinese leadership and the Communist Party of China are on notice, both internally and globally. It finds itself on the periphery of the Ukraine crisis and possibly feels this is a golden opportunity for it to sneak back into prominence and make itself irreplaceable again. Now let's take a look at what is similar geographically and geopolitically as far as Ukraine and Taiwan are concerned. Don't forget, the West is Eurocentric. The United States tried a pivot towards Indo-Pacific, yet it is back to focusing in Ukraine. Let's take a look at the map. The North European plains are relatively flat plains, like a funnel, narrowest at Germany, expanding as we go east. In 1989, when the German wall fell, it was promised that NATO would not expand eastwards if Germany was allowed to become a member of NATO. 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed and the West promised no further expansion of NATO and requested the Warsaw Pact be dissolved. The Warsaw Pact was dissolved, yet NATO continued its expansion eastwards. Newer and newer members joined, whether it was Poland or the breakaway republics from the old Soviet Union, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania. Russia warned a number of times, but NATO was not concerned because it felt Russia did not matter anymore. The deepest red line as far as Russia was concerned is Ukraine joining NATO. If Russia finds nuclear missiles in Ukraine from the NATO side, they would be not more than a few minutes away and virtually impossible to interdict. This, the Russia could not permit. On the other hand, there was this issue of Crimea. Crimea was always a part of Russia till it was gifted to Ukraine for purely administrative purposes by Stalin. Post-independence, Ukraine bargained away the nuclear weapons. Don't forget, these nuclear weapons were Russian weapons, which were returned to Russia or dismantled. Ukraine could not have used them, but it used them as a major bargaining chip as far as getting itself aid, assistance, and prominence was concerned. In return for a guarantee that there will be no territorial strike on Ukraine from Russia. Yet, one must remember the only major port which Russia has in warm waters is Sevastopol in Crimea. When Ukraine started demanding the Sevastopol port be vacated by Russia, it was probably one too far a demand. Russia used flimsy reasons and occupied Crimea. In return, Ukraine dammed the Dnieper River, thereby starving Crimea of water. Now you can imagine what all has been happening behind the scenes for Ukraine to make itself a major red line as far as Russia is concerned. And it has been quoted very, very assiduously by the United States and the rest of the NATO countries to join European Union and NATO. Similar is the situation as far as Taiwan is concerned. Take a look at the geography of China and its access to Pacific and Indian Oceans. you will find that China is ringed by two island chains, the first island chain and the second. The first island chain basically consists of the Spratly Islands, the Malaysian Peninsula, Philippines, and Taiwan, moving on to Japan through the Senkaku Islands. And the second island chain is further east from the outer side of Japan to outer side of Philippines down south. These two island chains ensure China and its naval might cannot move into the Pacific Ocean unfettered, or even into the Indian Ocean, because then it has to go through the narrow Malacca Straits or the Sunda Straits further south. Taiwan is right in the middle and probably the linchpin, or the reason why China feels very, very conscious. It is the guardian of the Pacific. Let's take a look at the north part of this island chain, the first island chain. The first island chain to the north forms starting from south, starting with Taiwan, moves on to the Ryukyu Islands, Japan, and South Korea. The East China Sea, as this area would be, has the Senkaku Island, which is a group of 5 inhabited islands in the East China Sea. It was controlled by Japan since 1895, taken over by the United States. These islands are very close to key shipping lanes and rich fishing grounds. Taiwan also claims the island, but China has its fishing fleet act as an occupying force and has been showing this force by very, very regularly. Let's take a look further south now. This is the area of the South China Sea. In the South China Sea, China has claimed virtually the entire part by what is called as the 9-dash line. Has historical references, many of them cooked up. This was foo-fooed by Philippines, and thereafter the International Tribunal at The Hague upheld the Philippines' claim and said China has no business to be occupying these areas. Yet, China doesn't really bother. So, what exactly is the issue here? The issue here is the fact that $3.4 trillion of global trade passes through the South China Sea. It is 1/3 the global maritime trade. 80% of energy imports and 40% of total trade of China happens through here. It has potentially significant but unexplored oil and gas to the tune of 11 billion barrels of oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of gas. It is home to one of the best fishing grounds globally, accounting for over 10% of global fishing. Therefore, China, to embolden itself and enhance its hegemony, has created artificial islands. The Fiery Cross Reef, for example. It uses its fishing fleet as a de facto occupying force, for example, in the Mischief Reef, as far as Philippines is concerned, or in the Senkaku Islands. No wonder China finds Taiwan, a principality of China, as it says, at the crossroads for itself and its plans to get into the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean unfettered. Taiwan very obviously deserves a very special mention because it is for China the ultimate prize. It's an unsinkable aircraft carrier that keeps China on tenterhooks, just 18 kilometers off the Chinese mainland. Therefore, China has been carrying out very regular air incursions to tire out Taiwanese defenses. Over 750 sorties were conducted in the last 12 months alone. One such incursion, on the 4th of October 2021, had a total of over 144 aircraft. It's been conducting amphibious drills across the Taiwan Straits in the Fujian province of China. It amended the Chinese law, which now requires every ship to be available for military use and be modified to assist in amphibious landing. It has increased cyber attacks on Taiwan, and 20 to 40 million attacks have been carried out on Taiwan regularly on an annual basis. No wonder Taiwan has increased its defense budget to $8 billion this year, and it may well hit $15 billion next year. So, is Taiwan the next attack? There is a partnership between Xi Jinping and Putin. 81% of the residents of the Indo-Pacific feel that an emboldened China after the Ukraine attack will lead to more belligerent postures against Taiwan in the South China Sea and the Senkaku Islands. Yet, Ukraine's resistance has made Xi Jinping think again. Like everyone, he too expected Ukraine to fall quickly, yet it hasn't. 3 weeks into the attack, Ukraine is still fighting. Japan is a major economic power in the region, along with India, and therefore centric to the United States Indo-Pacific vision. On the other hand, don't forget, the Chinese and the Russian navies have been exercising regularly, more so in the last few months. The Chinese Navy is today in number bigger than even the US Navy. It is fast acquiring the capability to operate a carrier task force further away from its shores. It also now has nuclear submarines which can threaten the US mainland. So let's take a look at what is the situation as we find in the Indo-Pacific today. COVID, or the Wuhan virus, has badly dented the economies and threatened livelihood of almost all the nations here. Nations are very wary of Chinese hegemony, but the US has not proven itself to be very reliable either, especially after Iran, Afghanistan, and now Ukraine. Taiwan is counting days left before the attack happens, and preparations are visible on all sides. This region is expanding and weaponizing very rapidly. The Japanese defense budget has hit $47 billion, an unprecedented rise. Philippines is buying the BrahMos. So is the defense budgets of Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, et al. There is a growing realization that China cannot be contained single-handedly, and therefore bilateral military alliances are the order of the day. Take, for example, the alliance between Japan and Australia. Multilateral alliances like the Quad, which today is not a military alliance but may well morph into one in due course of time. The US, Australia, Japan, and India are investing heavily in this. AUKUS has brought the focus of US, UK, and Australia to build nuclear submarines. On the other hand, the way sanctions have been imposed on Russia has made many a nation here realize or wonder, if that can happen unilaterally, what will happen to us? the attention of US is back to the Atlantic and Europe. Although on one hand, the US had declared China as its only competitor as far as its White House interim national security guidance of March 2021, US doesn't seem to be having the stomach to counter China at the present moment of time. The invasion of Ukraine and the US response has shown the US is probably not able to find these policies for global peacemaking and security. Indo-Pacific, therefore, is on its own. The old world order served as a bedrock of peace and stability since 1945. It was designed by the US and its Western allies to prevent armed conflict and the economic nationalism that would rise from it. This collectively was called the Bretton Woods architecture. It set the rules for a stable, positive sum game and was comprised primarily of the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, the World Trade Organization, the NATO, G5, G20, and a host of other treaties and agreements. Sadly, it does not seem to be able to handle the new world threats. Institutions like the UN, IMF have been very ineffective to manage the changing world, especially when players don't care. North Korea, Iran, China, and now Russia are such examples. The old world order was Eurocentric. The new world order will necessarily have to be Pacific centric or maybe even China centric. Why? The Indo-Pacific accounts for 65% of the world's oceans, 25% of land, over 65% of global population, 50% of the global trade, 50% of global oil consumption, and it is the scene of many ongoing or potential conflicts, especially with a belligerent China. Yet, this region lacks effective structures for cooperative security and mechanisms to contain conflict. IORA, that's the Indian Ocean Regional Alliance, is one such baby step towards creating some sort of order here. The White House came up with its vision statement of the Indo-Pacific as recently as February 2022. Yet, there seems to be something or the other happening which is diverting the focus of the US. If I was a China conspirator and if I could influence the world, I probably would create situations exactly the way it is now to bring China into the fore and make China irreplaceable. See how quickly China has accepted to allow payments to Russia using Chinese yuan. China is replacing Russia as the second power or the global power number 2 after United States. It aims to be the number 1. It wants to replace the dollar as the standard reserve currency and bring in the renminbi into the policy. Chinese economy, which today is under great pressure, will suddenly find itself under happy times because it will charge a transaction fee for all currency transactions to Russia through the Chinese renminbi or the yuan. The financial system of the globe is under pressure, especially with SWIFT and its servers located in the European Union, Canada, and the US. This has enabled the removal of Russia. Will there be a parallel that will come up? The Indian UPI is one such system that can be used, so is Chinese. There is a realization that sanctions bite, but they're not very effective, if you will, if the nation under sanction doesn't care. For example, the oil for food in Iraq and Iran this plan failed. North Korea is still firing its missiles, not bothered. Spain, do you realize, is the world's largest exporter of saffron. Saffron doesn't grow in Spain. It is the saffron of Iran which comes to Spain to be exported, and Iran still makes money. Similarly, China will make money by acting as a transit between the world and Russia. It is forcing the world to work on alternatives to the Facebook, Google, Google Maps, MasterCard, and Visa, because Russians, to their dismay, found that they couldn't buy train tickets or purchase groceries because their Visa or MasterCard was not working. They couldn't find their way home because Google Maps are not working. Therefore, what would be India's interests? Very obviously, India wants to keep China at bay in its own backyard. It has a long boundary with China and a long festering border dispute. India wants to maintain its strategic autonomy by ensuring minimum effect of any future sanction. It wants to continue on the path of sustained economic growth, yet will work to ensure its payment systems and strengthen them and make them global, like RuPay, Bheem, UPI. Atmanirbharta in defense is mandatory. The Make in India policy can never be a success without incorporating defense. It has to maintain and seek greater leadership in space, artificial intelligence, high technology, and manufacturing across the spectrum, from chips to very low end manufacturing. It has to be immune to switching off from global players like Google, Facebook, Visa, and MasterCard. Here, you will realize the masterstroke played by the current government in promoting RuPay, UPI, that's Universal Payment Interface, and Bheem. The Indian space program with Indian GPS Navik and applications like Map My India, Cowin, Arogyashri bring India to the forefront in ensuring we remain independent. We have to continue our research and development investments. No wonder we will have to manage China till we are economically strong enough to counter it across the board. We would need to invest in alliances like Quad, Quad Plus, and partner other Indo-Pacific countries to have agreements like the IORA. We need to be able to maintain our naval superiority and presence in the Indian Ocean region to ensure the Indo-Pacific is free, open, connected, prosperous, secure, and resilient. So where do we go from here? You must realize the US reliability has taken a hit. Yet, the Chinese hegemony is just as bad. Look at its treatment of the minorities or its economic colonization. What will be the final contours of the new world order? Would it be Russian roulette, which is leading into Chinese checkers, or American football? Presently, with China and the US at the two poles, the choice seems between the devil and the deep blue sea. We continue to live, my dear friends, in very interesting times. If you approve of the video, please do leave a like and please do comment. This immensely motivates me. As always, don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you have not done so already, and press the bell icon to be notified of fresh videos. Please feel free to share this video with your friends and family. I look forward, as always, to your suggestions and continued support. Until next time, Jai Hind.